Hey everybody, welcome back to the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. My name's Thomas,
I'm Julie.
and in this episode we're going to be working on lesson 3 of our 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage. And so if you haven't had a chance to get started on this series with us, make sure you go back and listen to lessons 1 and 2. We'll just recap the titles of those for you real quick. Lesson 1 was about supporting your spouse. Lesson 2 was to have sex often with your spouse. We got to clarify that. And then lesson 3 is intimacy is more than just sex.
Yeah, so what is intimacy? Intimacy is defined a lot of different ways as we were prepping for this episode. But if you look up the actual definition of intimacy, it's defined as close familiarity or friendship, otherwise known as closeness.
Right. And, another way that another definition I found of it is an intimate relationship is an interpersonal relationship that involves physical and or emotional intimacy. Although an intimate relationship is commonly a sexual relationship, it may also be a non-sexual relationship.
Yeah, I've actually heard someone say intimacy is knowing and being known. That's the core of intimacy. And I believe intimacy is what separates roommates from soulmates.
That's good. I think that kind of the way that we're talking about it in this episode is more of like a both and, is the, closeness and friendship side paired with the sexual physical side. But I also do believe that intimacy is a step that leads you into the physical and sexual side. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. Kind of like what you said, it separates roommates from soulmates. I also think it takes things, it turns things into a we over a me mentality. Think about it from this perspective in marriage, knowing that your vows were something to the effect of for richer or poorer, better or worse, sickness or health, not just richer, better, and healthier. It's not just the good times, it's also the bad times. Being intimate is, being there for your spouse, knowing that you're with them no matter what, and they're with you no matter what. And we're going to kind of break that down a little bit, and you'll hear about some of that throughout this episode.
Yeah, so if lesson number 3 is intimacy is more than just sex, we've come up with things to look for in intimacy. And so intimacy is spelled Intimacy. I think I got that right.
Intimacy.
It sounds like a
spelling bee.
A cheer. Give me intimacy. But we broke it down. It's a lot of letters, but they all, to us, to Thomas and I, mean something differently that will make up what intimacy is to us when we say it's not just about sex. Because I think a lot of people think that intimacy is being intimate physically with your partner, and there's, like you said earlier, a lot more to it. Yeah. So
it is that, but it's also other things too.
Yeah,
it's a lot bigger than just that.
And you'll have a better physical intimacy if the emotional intimacy is there, especially if it's there first. And so to break it down, we'll start with the letter I in the word intimacy, and we think that would stand for intentionality. So you can't be too busy when you're trying to be intimate. You really have to think of it as a purposeful pursuit. You're pursuing this person, but it's purposeful. So I is for intentionality. Mm-hmm. And then we put nonverbal communication, right? So we're really big fans of communication in marriage.
Yep.
And in intimacy, but specifically in this, would be nonverbal communication would be, of course, like kissing, holding hands, hugs,
that special look you give them.
Yeah, like flirting without words. Especially speaking as a woman, I think we find security in our husband's arms, and I want you to hold me without any other agenda. And that's kind of just makes me feel safe and secure. I actually heard someone say to her husband, hug me because you love me, not just because you want me. that was funny to me, but so great. Just those nonverbal communication with no other agenda. Just that special touch, or like I said, the look. Mm-hmm. And then T would stand for trust. And, I think to trust someone, you have to be completely open.
Yeah, you have to be vulnerable with them in this. That's where the real depth of intimacy comes in, is in the vulnerability.
Absolutely. So trust is a huge component in intimacy. In fact, secrets are the enemy of trust, and there can be no intimacy without trust. So, we're big fans, like, tell each other everything from big to small to everything in between. We tell each other everything and anything. There's no secrets and no lies in order to have that trust and intimacy.
Yeah, that'll just damage things all around, keeping secrets and those little white lies that you think aren't a big deal, they can come back to haunt you. So for real, and it damages that trust, kind of keeping those things away will damage that trust. And trust is something that takes a lot of time to earn back. I think I heard it say once that it's earned in drops and lost in buckets. And so it's a pretty heavy analogy.
Right. Trust is huge.
Yeah. So next we've got another I.
Yeah, we have another I in the word intimacy, but this one stands for investment. So to show intimacy is going to take some investment. Money investment would be, I would love you to buy flowers and cards and, or go on romantic dates. That's going to be a money investment. It's also a time investment, because we said the first I, you have to be intentional. And so, investment with your time. Again, you're pursuing the other person, and we're actually making that a whole lesson in itself in the 15 lessons that we've learned after 15 years of marriage. Spoiler alert, one of our lessons later will be invest in your marriage. But we couldn't leave out the second I, is invest in intimacy as well. Those tangible things, like I said, that you could buy, but also just the valuable time to invest in pursuing your spouse.
Yeah, and this is more like a I don't want to say short-term investment, but this is more of a smaller everyday investment than what we're talking about within what we will talk about in the other episode, Invest in Your Marriage. Invest in your marriage is going to be like investing in your marriage as a whole, really trying to grow the whole entire marriage, the whole entire relationship farther, make it last longer, things like that. This type of investment is really just investing in you and the other person. And so, like I said, I don't want to call it a short-term investment, because it's not, but kind of looking at them as two different types of investments here. So let's see. Next, we're going to move on to the letter M. And the letter M is, we made it stand for mastery. Also known as depth of knowledge. And so you want to deeply know your spouse on an emotional level. You want to know what encourages them, what scares them, etc. And physically, you want to know them deeply on a physical level, what energizes them and arouses them and things like that. And that's where the mastery comes in. Mastery isn't learned on day one of a marriage or day one of dating. If it was, there wouldn't be books for marriage, there wouldn't be podcasts for marriage, there wouldn't be any courses or anything like that to help you, because it would be mastered on day one. But mastery takes a long time, and it takes a lot of intentionality. Go back to the first letter I. You have to really, truly try to master and learn about your spouse on all those different levels to make your relationship deeper.
Yeah, I think mastery goes hand in hand with the definition of knowing and being known. Like the depth of knowledge that I know about you and the depth of knowledge that you know about me. And it's both. It's not that I know everything about you and you don't know me. It's kind of more of like an equal mastery of getting to know each other on that deeper level.
Right. And the next one is the letter A. And for this, we've got acceptance. So this one's pretty simple. Not necessarily easy, but simple to understand. Just being able to be you and not worry about being judged by your spouse. We heard it said recently, you have to be naked emotionally before you can be naked physically in front of your spouse. And so shout out to Garrett and Chelsea from Transformed Couples for that quote. We talked to them on a couple of episodes a few weeks ago, so that was a great couple of episodes, and they brought that quote to us, and it just really hit home for us. I mean, it's true. You have to be able to be completely open emotionally with someone to be comfortable, totally comfortable being naked with them physically.
Yeah, and I think being naked just in general, like sex aside, that's really hard. Mm-hmm. I think like we kind of take that for granted maybe when you're married and you're used to it then, and that's really good, but to get to that level, so just to be naked without that physical, mm-hmm. I think it's easy to kind of get undressed, have sex, put clothes back on, but can you stand there and be comfortable with yourself and truly accept yourself and also your spouse, accepting you for who you are? I think that just takes a whole nother level of intimacy to be, comfortable in acceptance.
For sure. And next we've got the letter C. C is for care. And we want to look at this as caring for your spouse above yourself in all areas. That would be well-being, comfort, safety. So you want to make sure you're providing for them. You're doing everything you can to provide for their well-being. You want to make sure that in times where they're distressed, you can be their comfort. Like Julie said earlier in nonverbal communication, she finds security just being in my arms, and that's vice versa as well. And also with safety, you want to make sure that they're safe above yourself. And so I think that this goes both ways. I think this can commonly be stereotyped for the male to, put their wife above themselves in all of these regards. The stereotyped to be the breadwinner, stereotyped to care for them, stereotyped to make sure they're the ones protecting them, being safe, which as a man, I believe that those things are all true, but I don't think that stereotype is one-sided. I think that it truly is a stereotype. I think it really should be both ways. Both spouses should have the mentality of wanting to take care of the other person before themselves. And if you can't do that, then I think that if both of you aren't doing that, aren't in that mentality, I think that create some issues for some selfishness to creep in and kind of get back to that me over we type of scenario. And so I think that making sure you're caring for the other person above yourself is super important.
Yeah, without care, there'd be no intimacy.
Right.
If you didn't care for me, it wouldn't be a very intimate relationship.
Exactly. And I think to kind of drive the analogy home a little bit on this one, think of it as if everything were completely falling apart and in dire straits for you. If there was one meal on the table, I would be pushing it to your side and saying, you eat.
Aww.
You eat. And if we were stuck outside in a blizzard, I would give you my jacket. You be warm. You be like Jack and Rose after the Titanic, and plenty of room on that piece of wood for both of them. But for some reason, he let her be up there by himself. And then in safety, if something goes awry, then I want to make sure you're the one who's getting to safety, and that I hope that mentality is reciprocated. Although I'm probably going to be the one, a little more pushy in that scenario, just naturally due to our personalities and things like that. But the mentality is what we're talking about here, the mentality of caring for the other person above yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one we've got, we're on to the Y in intimacy. And that is standing for yearning. And yearning is a feeling of intense longing for something. And it can lead to physical intimacy. Now, we looked this one up, and, yearning actually talks about it being something being absent for a long time, and that you're really wanting that back, like that strong craving to have something back. And so the way we decided to approach this was, we don't want you to be missing the intimacy in your relationship for a long time, but we want you to yearn for it as if it were missing. And so if you look at it from the perspective of, if you lost your spouse for whatever reason, the feeling that you would have yearning for them to be back and yearning for, all of those things to come back, all these things in the word intimacy to come back, that's the feeling that you should be having. That's the yearning that you should be having constantly. Like we said at the top, the purposeful pursuit builds that yearning. It's like you're always yearning to pursue your spouse even more and learn even more about them and grow even more with them.
Yeah, I think some of our listeners are probably yearning for intimacy, though, with their spouse, even though maybe it once was there. But what you're saying is it could be lost. And so you might be being physical and having sex here and there. But if you want it to be deeper, there's got to be more than just that physical act. And so go back through how we spelled out intimacy and really take notes or discuss that with your spouse, because, we chose this as one of our lessons, and it came after the lesson number 2 is have sex with your spouse, often. And, so we think sex is good. Have that often and you'll feel connected. But intimacy, I think if you want a thriving sex life, a thriving sex life is a byproduct of intentional intimacy. And so if you want your physical relationship to improve, the emotional intimacy has to be there too. And we can't pursue the byproduct of actions if we're not willing to do the actions.
Right.
So that's why intimacy is one of our lessons.
Yeah. And in preparation for this, I think that the physical relationship is built on the foundation of the emotional relationship, right? I mean, if we said it earlier, you have to be emotionally naked in front of someone before you can be physically naked in front of someone. And of course, that statement is not an end all be all. I mean, there's plenty of times that's happened. I mean, there's a reason that Tinder exists, right? I mean, but I think that's just kind of an empty physical relationship. And so to have that deep physical relationship where you're feeling filled up, you have to have that emotional foundation first to make the physical relationship, the sexual relationship, stable. Think of it this way. It's a lot easier to have sex on a bed with your spouse than it is to have sex on a balance beam with your spouse. And so, if you're, the bed is that stronger foundation, right? I mean, if you can have sex on a balance beam, props to you.
Who's going to go out and try that, though? Let us know if you tried it.
Don't send us pictures. Don't send us pictures. Just tell us. But for real, though, I mean, think of it in that perspective. You want your relationship to be balanced and sturdy. And so that way no one gets hurt. And so we always want to try to leave you with some takeaways. So you want to take the first one for us?
Yeah, I love just encouraging you all to discuss what we're discussing with your spouse. So hopefully you're listening together, although we know that's not always practical. We listen to our own podcast, but we always come back and discuss, I listened to this today, or, I listened to this today, this is a takeaway, or we're texting each other a podcast. So, send this to your spouse and then discuss it. So that's, my takeaway for you is is discuss how we spelled out intimacy. That's what intimacy means for us and our relationship that we want to encourage you in. But you might have some other thoughts that's just, unique to you and your spouse and your marriage. So that's the number one takeaway of my encouragement, is to just sit down and discuss intimacy with your spouse, even outside of sex and outside of any physical things. Of just, how we say, how can we apply this to our life? So what does intimacy mean to you, so that we can apply it to our marriage?
Yeah, totally. And the second takeaway we've got for you is, if you didn't get to hear last week's episode, Have Sex Often with Your Spouse, make sure you go back and check that out. We had a special guest on that episode with us, the creator of an app called Intimately Us. And we've been using this app, and it's great. And so this is our second piece of practical advice. Go and download this app. If you feel like you're struggling in this area, go and download this app. It's simple. It's really cool because it allows you to connect the app with your partner via a code, so that you're only connected with them. So it really helps to build that trust and things like that. Additionally, if you're struggling with talking and getting to know your spouse on a deeper level, the app has that covered for you. In the app, there's a section called Discover. Then there's a button called Conversation Starters. Then there's a button called Intimacy. And it gives you some just questions that you can spark the conversation with your spouse, kind of getting to know them more intimately on a deeper level. So go check that out. We're going to leave a link in an affiliate link in the description of the show notes. We'll also have it on our website, so you can go check that out as well. But this app is fantastic, and there's a lot more to it rather than just conversation starters. There's so much. We've also got a blog post that we did on it, so go check out that blog post on our website as well to learn more about the app. But that's our last piece of practical advice for this episode.
Yeah, like you said, so much is in this app that we're still exploring. So go check it out. Thanks for being on this journey with us as we unpacked the 15 lessons after 15 years of marriage. We'll keep putting out episodes every Monday, so stay with us every week to finish out these 15 lessons, because this is just lesson number 3, so lots more to come. And if you want to check out the blog post, or even share the podcast with your friends, or the link for the app, everything's on our website at marriagepuzzle.com. And if you're not following us on social media, we're on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Puzzle. And we look forward to you joining us next week, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.
Have a good week.